This is a budget Aussie-made Chelsea boot. It's very light, very comfortable, and it's worn by all the air charter pilots in the Northern Territory. G'day, welcome back to Bootlosophy. If we haven't met, my name is Tech. I'm working in Perth in Western Australia, which is Wajak country, Kaleko Wajak Nongabuja. Now I'm taking a look at these mongrel boots. They're made in Australia. They're called the Premium Black Riding Boot. It's obviously a Chelsea boot. This is, I suppose you might call it, the budget cousin to R.M. Williams, because it is much, much cheaper, and I'll tell you about it when I tell you about the value that it sells for. Let me tell you a little story about this boot that I encountered. So I hadn't had this boot for very long when I went on a job to the Northern Territory, and that job involved flying from Darwin in a small four-seater charter plane to a place in East Arnhem called Ganbalanya, and back again in a charter flight. And when we flew there, I noticed the pilot was wearing a kind of pair of black Chelsea boots, but I didn't get a close look. But on the flight back, we talked a lot, and as he was loading the bags and putting them into the engine nacelles where the containers were for luggage, I was looking at his boots, and I saw the tag fall out around the back, and it says Mongrel Boots. So I said to him, hey, I know the people who make those boots, and if you want, you can go and see my interview with Phil Cloris from Mongrel Boots to tell you all about that. And I said, look, can I take a photo and I'll send them to him and say, I saw you up here in the Northern Territory wearing these. And he said, yeah, sure, no problems. We love these boots. I said, we? Said, practically every air charter pilot flying out of Darwin would wear these boots. They'd rather wear these than the more work boot styles like Blundstones or the K9s that come from Mongrel. And they much rather wear these boots than R.M. Williams, which they say takes them a long time to break in, whereas these are immediate. So that's a really interesting story about these boots. Now, let me go through the style and what they represent. So this is a 6-inch, by that I mean roughly 6 inches from the top of the heel up to the top of the collar. And it's a Chelsea boot design. In Australia, mostly these are called elastic-sided boots. In England and around the world nowadays, and starting to in Australia, they're called Chelsea boots. And obviously the most famous example in Australia is the R.M. Williams. Now, the history of Chelsea boots is a bit disputed. It's quite well known that they were designed for Queen Victoria by her bootmaker, because she wanted a boot that you could quite easily slip on, slip off, because riding boots in those days were quite tall, and they had buckles and belts and buttons that you had to wrap straps around. It took her a long time to get ready. So her bootmaker made her a pair of these from the newly developed elastic rubber that had been invented roughly about the same time. From then, the history becomes a bit disputed. It's quite well known that her boots started beginning to be copied by the Chelsea set, the rich people who lived in Chelsea at the turn of the century. But they weren't necessarily coined Chelsea boots at that time, we think, or maybe they were, not sure. Much later in the 1960s, of course, a lot of pop groups wore these, pointy Cuban heel versions with the elastic sides. And it's said that because they hunted around the suburb of Kensington and Chelsea in England, in London, they were then called Chelsea boots. So there's a disputation about which way around Chelsea boots came around. Historically, in the colonies, the British colonies of South Africa, India, and Australia in particular, New Zealand, elastic-sided boots became taken on as the work boot of those areas because it was easy to pull them on and off. You didn't have to lace them up, and you could go horse riding in them. And in many cases in Australia, boots like these were used by musterers, cattle and sheep stations, to ride on horses and muster sheep and cattle. What would you wear with these? With Chelsea boots, they're so versatile you could wear them with anything. And in this particular style, I think, you can wear them dressily. I haven't polished these up, but they can polish quite well. That's premium full grain leather. So you could wear them with a suit if you like. In Australia, that's a well accepted thing. You could also wear them with jeans. You could wear them with shorts. So they're very versatile and very stylish, and really you can wear them with any outfit that you'd like to consider. Right, let me tell you about Mongrel Boots. I'll just read through some of my notes here. The brand started in 1930, or the company actually started in 1930. It was founded by a Stanley Chloros, started in Sydney, in I think the Surrey Hills district. He was very clever because he went around in the 1930s and he bought up liquidated boot-making equipment. Because of the Great Depression, a lot of businesses were going bust. So he went around and he went to liquidators' auctions and he started buying up boot-making equipment, which created this workshop factory that he could use to produce boots. World War II saw a great boon to the boot makers of Australia. The Chloros family got their benefits because there was a big contract out for military boots. Then it was the same company, but in 1960 the company was renamed Victor Footwear, which remains the same company today. But sometime in 2000, the Victor Boot Company created a Mongrel boot. It was the name of the actual boot design. That name stuck. People liked the name Mongrel, and the company around 2000 changed its name, or attached a name, a brand name of Mongrel Boots to the Victor Boot Company. They've always focused on work boots in particular, and Australian work boots would be these elastic-sided work boots. They do a light casual version, a light work version called the K9, and you can go and see my reviews of them. They also do steel toe cap boots with lace-up designs, and were really taken up by the mining industry. So much so that they invented a side zip boot where you had a lace-up and then you had a side zip as well. And that was actually for safety reasons, so that you could remove the boot in case of an accident without having to further damage the foot. But the focus on work boots, and then eventually continued making the current range, which is really not very different from the original range coming out of the 1960s. And they continue to be made in Australia, and they have invested very heavily in their factory in Sydney, which is a big plus mark. So let's go through the construction. Let me talk about the uppers first. Mongrel Boots do make a lot of their elastic-sided work boots using nubuck leathers, oiled nubucks or nubucks, which gives a slightly better protection against scuffs and grazes and so on, because they don't have that highly polished, highly finished grain material that can scratch, because they're already slightly nappy. But these are made with premium full grain leather. It is designed as and sold as a riding boot, so you could actually pull these on and slip into the saddle. It is lined inside, fully lined from the vamp and up the shaft, and you can see the lining. Very soft, premium grade lining. The soles, I think, are worth mentioning, because these are not welted, these are not stitched soles. And many people would say, look, I really don't want to get them because you'd have to throw them away. Now, technically, they are resolable. You can get people to rip the direct injection molded sole off and then glue on a cup sole, or you can get a stitched sole put on in exchange for the direct injection molding. And what cobblers will do is they will take off the direct injection molding sole, put on a leather midsole, which is Blake stitched to the bottom of the boot, and then with that leather midsole acting as a welt, then stitch through that into the outsole itself. So they convert it into a Blake Rapid or a Mackay stitch. This sole is made of polyurethane and thermopolyurethane twin layer. They're direct injection molded in the sense that once the boot is lasted, it's put into a mold, and hot molten polyurethane is injected into that mold, and then that mold is removed, another one put on, and TPU is injected to create that harder, firmer, more durable surface, whereas the mid layer is that soft, bouncy polyurethane. So I have actually never known a direct injection molded boot to strip off the way cemented soles have. So because of the molten nature of that direct injection, it's really a very durable way to sole your boot. Other than the fact that once it wears, as I said, you have to get it resoled or throw it away, which most people do in Australia because of the price. One thing I do have to talk about is this chemical reaction called hydrolysis, which happens with all polyurethane soled footwear. Timberland, for example, with their polyurethane molded shoes, as well as fashion brands like Echo and other fashion brands that use polyurethane, will run through a chemical reaction called hydrolysis. Hydrolysis is where the polyurethane, which is full of little air bubbles, actually extracts water molecules from the air and sucks them in. And you do have to wear your polyurethane-based boots regularly in order to basically squish that moisture back out again and keep the moisture inside from reacting with the polyurethane. That's called hydrolysis. Apparently, if you wear them once a month, that's probably all right. If you in the Northern Hemisphere and you stick them in the cupboard over summer and then pull them out in winter, there is a fair chance that they will be starting to degrade and fall into bits. So just be aware of that. There is a shank, because it is a horse riding boot, and I'm not sure that they use a steel shank. I think it might be a fiberglass shank, simply because of the weight of it. It is so soft. Going back to the leather, it is premium full grain leather, and you can actually see the grain in it as I look now, the actual hair holes and everything, really, really well. But because of the polish that's applied, you're not seeing the necessary rough breaks that you might with an untreated full grain leather. So let me talk about Leathercare. The leather's actually got quite a dry hand to it. It has a dry feel. The way it's tanned doesn't put a lot of oils on the surface, but it's in there, so the surface feels quite dry. It's supple and flexible, and yet also quite firm. So it could be quite stiff, which is what I'll get into when I talk about the comfort of breaking these in. The way I care for them, I think, is no different from any other full grain boot. I just brush them regularly, condition them when they start to maybe feel dry, or preempt that and condition them maybe a couple of times, once every couple of months. Often, because I don't wear my boots all that much, I condition my boots about twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. And that's all you need. It's an easy care leather. Let me talk about sizing, comfort and fit. Now, Mongrel uses the UK sizing convention. And in reality, that's an Australian sizing convention too, because we are a UK-based former colony. The UK sizing convention usually uses the numbers one number down from the US size number. So I am a US 8.5 in length, and I'm a D in US width. So on the Brannock device, that little thing that you slide around and measure, I measure 8.5 D US. So that means in the UK convention, take one number down, I'm 7.5. And in almost all my UK boots, I wear 7.5. The exception is R.M. Williams, which, because it has a very skinny, pointy nose to the end of the chisel type last, I find that a 7.5 in regular width is too small. If I go up a width in R.M. Williams, then I find the whole boot goes up in width and is a bit sloppy, whereas I like the heel. In this boot, it is a bit strange. I should wear 7.5, but this is a 7. The reason is, half sizes in boots like these, by Mongrel, by Blundstone, by Redback, half sizes don't mean an increase in length. They mean they're 7 wide. It's a strange convention. But having said that, my 7.5 fits these 7s really, really well. I don't know why. I'm not quite sure what would happen if you were, say, a 7. I would not go down a size to a 6 for sure. So I guess if you were a 7, you'd also fit these. But where I have maybe a little less room up front to the tip of the boot from my toe, maybe as a 7, you'd actually have a little bit more room in front of the toe. I don't know. It's a strange anomaly, but all of my boots, these direct injection molded styles, I go down to a 7. What's the comfort? They are very light, they're very comfortable. If I turn back to my other Mongrel boots, if I turn back to my Blundstones and my Redbacks, they didn't require a break-in because they were mainly made of nubuck or kip leathers, which are a little bit thinner. This is quite a thick, plus-lined, full-grain leather. And I found that this boot I had to break in. When I first put them on, I found they were stiff not only in the shaft, but also in the ball of the foot, which is where you expect it to bend. So when I was walking, my footsteps used to tend to go clunk, clunk up, as opposed to down, bend. It's beginning to do so now, but it did need breaking in. And because it needed breaking in, I did find that I was feeling pressure along the sides a little bit, not because of size. I did try the 7.5 wide, and it was too wide. It just felt floppy. So this premium leather does require a bit of break-in, differently from their kip and their nubuck leathers. However, they are light, they are very comfortable. They have an Orthotech removable insole, which I'll pull out. And as you can see, it's not just a flat piece of foam. You can see that it's actually molded so it fits that slope of the heel. And not just that, you can see it's also bent up on each side so as to give you proper arch support. It's very light, very, very comfortable. I do really like the Orthotech insoles. So value. These are listed at Australian $230 on the Mongrel website. If you look at Blundstone website, if you look at the Redback website, you'll find that they list certain list price for their boots. This is listed at $230. However, if you go to retail stores, they are never at $230. Most of the retail stores sell them for around $200. And in fact, I think there is currently a bit of a price war, and they're selling for under $200 Australian dollars at the time. So I think that represents great value, and that's why these air charter pilots like them, not just for the lightness and the comfort when you're cooped up in a cockpit. And believe me, those Cessnas are very small cockpits. Not only is that light and comfortable, but for that price, you're not having this heavy boot you have to break in like an RM Williams. I'm not converting. I'm still a heritage boot guy. All I'm saying is this meets what you need from a boot that price. They'll last you for 2 to 4 years, depending on wear. Some of my friends who wear boots like these, who are builders and tradies, they'll probably last 2 years, and then the leather starts to go, and then the sole starts to go. But if you're wearing these as a pilot, they'll last you 2 to 4 years, maybe even longer, depending on how much you use them and how much wear is in the sole. With the wear I have, if I keep hydrolysis at bay, I reckon they'd last a good 7 years in my hands. And don't forget, they'll cost you a bit more, probably around $100, but you can resole them. So it's not necessarily that you have to throw them away. Okay, so there it is. I hope you like my review of these really quite unique, I think, Mongrel premium riding boots in really great full grain leather. Needs breaking in, but very light, very comfortable, with a great insole that gives you great arch support. Don't forget, click on like, and if you haven't yet, subscribe. I'm coming back next week with more boot reviews, so make sure you keep in touch with the channel, and I'll see you later. Take care out there.